home for children. That was the dream for their parents and mothers, actually, to protect their children in Faridpur. And Shapla Kuri, I believe the name of the institution. And I still see the pictures where children are safe, they're living. And I come to know that many children who...
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Seema. Thank you, Mahbub, for joining us. You know, we are celebrating 40 years of ActionAid Bangladesh. So it's a very special moment for us. And we know you have been the co-travelers in our journey. Seema in your regional and global role, and Mahbub very much hands-on in Bangladesh. So it is lovely to see both of you. And today we would like to talk about ActionAid and the child sponsorship program. You know how child sponsorship program has been integral part of ActionAid globally, and similarly ActionAid in Bangladesh. So just to please introduce yourselves. We are connecting globally, and thanks to internet. Mahbub, you are in Canada, and Seema, you are in Bangalore. So technology has made this possible. But tell me a little bit about the child sponsorship journey in Bangladesh, and how did it take off? You know, do you remember?
First of all, congratulations to ActionAid Bangladesh for celebrating 40 years. It's a huge journey, and I was part of that journey for over 10 years. But still, I keep the memories of ActionAid and child sponsorship, and still I use those stories in my classroom in Toronto, with Toronto Metropolitan University, or at Centennial College. And regarding my experience with sponsorship, I have started my work as a sponsorship officer. At that time, ActionAid used to implement development area. At that time, it was called through child sponsorship, and it was more direct service based. Students, especially children from school, they were supported in DA2 and Novojog School. I still remember.
Where is Novojog School?
It is in
Which part of
Mohammadpur.
the country?
It is Dhaka, Mohammadpur, and where actually ActionAid initiated their program in Bhola and Dhaka. So Dhaka ActionAid started with Mohammadpur area, and Novojog School was the prime entry point for ActionAid work since I think 1983. I think still we have some sort of attachment, I believe, with Dhaka and especially Mohammadpur area through assistance for slum dwellers. Anyway, so when I joined there, I found that we had some partnership with the schools, and also community-based sponsorship children were part of our program. And it was amazing to work with children and school teachers, community organizers. And at that time, I remember the sponsorship program was more focusing on children and their families, not in human rights-based approach. But later, from 2000 onward, we had a shift in our program that sponsorship children would be treated more as community ambassador, but the funding will realize through child sponsorship program that will be invested in community development along with children and their families. So I remember that this is how we had a shift. Initially, we had little tension in the community because some children and their families were thinking that whether they will be disconnected from the programs. But however, through our unique approaches, we continue that program.
Were the main features, you would say, of and scope of a child sponsorship in ActionAid? And then I'll come Bangladesh, and then I'll come to Seema.
That's a great question. And yes, for our viewers, child sponsorship is I would say a program. Children are connected with the sponsor of North, and through this relationship, we mobilize resources for community development, families development, and children for the development of children. So for example, I remember when I started my work with ActionAid, at that time ActionAid used to implement directly, and we had around 900 sponsors and approximately 900 children. So they are part of our program, their family were part of our program.
So on a global level, child sponsorship was the initial programming of ActionAid, right? When it,
Yes.
since ActionAid was globally founded in 73, it's celebrating over 50 years. So if you look back, what are the features of child sponsorship, and how do you link them with the experience of work in Bangladesh?
First, let me thank you and ActionAid Bangladesh for having me here. It's wonderful. It's like a reminiscence journey for me to go back and talk about ActionAid and child sponsorship. Let me take you a little further into history for the global ActionAid. So ActionAid started its journey with child sponsorship in 1972, and at that time itself ActionAid started its work. So when in 1972 a humanitarian and philanthropist, we always take his name, Cecil Jackson Cole, he founded a child sponsorship charity called Action in Distress at that time. In 1979, that name was changed to ActionAid. When ActionAid Bangladesh came into being, child sponsorship also started for ActionAid Bangladesh. So the connection is long, and connection is very entwined with the ActionAid's connection with child sponsorship. So they were kind of synonymous at that time. So globally, if you see, ActionAid child sponsorship model is based on a unique relationship between a supporter and a child. Once I forgot the trustee's name, but one trustee of ActionAid UK, and then he was trustee of ActionAid Global also. He had once put it very beautifully. He said child sponsorship was like one single candle in the darkness that lightened up the whole surrounding. So child sponsorship provided the opportunity to develop, empower the whole community of the child. The child cannot flourish in isolation. So if we want the holistic development of child, the community work has to be done. So the model, as Hassan said, sponsor donates regularly to ActionAid to carry on interventions in the community that would enable the child to lead a fulfilling life with dignity.
So you're saying,
yeah,
that the child sponsorship enable ActionAid to work with the people in poverty, most marginalized, different groups, right? And
exactly.
This was an entry point, but it was designed not just between a child, but the child, the family, and the entire community. We were trying to help them graduate out of poverty and enjoy their rights and entitlement. So, what are the stories that come to your mind?
Okay. So the main story about child sponsorship and the beauty of it in ActionAid Bangladesh or any other South countries is that child sponsorship created the enabling environment to empowerment of the community to become self-reliant. Then later, when we came into human rights-based approach, we said entitlements of the community. We worked on all that, but in the or in the center was always this child who wouldn't have developed in isolation. So ActionAid kept evolving in terms of policies. The child sponsorship model of ActionAid kept evolving in terms of policies. We changed the communication, we changed the storytelling, we changed the fund allocations to meet the changing requirements of our evolving organization. And now about ActionAid Bangladesh, I have very, very, inspiring stories, lots of them. But I will tell, I will tell you two of them. So one is of, I can't choose one or two, but anyway, I'll still choose. So there are many success stories. So I visited ActionAid Bangladesh many times. And think my first visit was Farapa when you became the country director. So I might have come there in 2000, 7, 8 for the first time. But every time I came, I went back more inspired by the transformation that ActionAid Bangladesh child sponsorship brought in the life of children and communities. I went back to share all these stories, the inspirations, the way ActionAid Bangladesh worked innovatively and creatively with the children and the community. Is learnt from there. ActionAid Bangladesh had a lot to, shared a lot with the other countries. Now, about the stories which were inspiring. So, one story is of the child centers. It never ceased to amaze me. Whatever number of child centers you have, so many, I don't know, maybe in hundreds. But for each of them, I have visited many of them. Each of them, the positive energy and happiness that emanated from the children of every child center. The confident children talking about their lives, their dreams, their aspirations. The children who are not privileged, very underprivileged and marginalized children stand up and tell you. I mean, I still get goosebumps thinking of that. So that was so inspiring that, something like this can change the whole life of not just one child, but so many children. And I know from working, you also know that it doesn't happen by chance, or it doesn't happen in one day. It's the result of dedicated effort, budget, planning, dedication of the team, support of the management, and your support, I would say, hats off, Farapa. It was wonderful. That, ActionAid Bangladesh invested in making every aspect of child's development a success. Then the second one was, it was a turning point. I mean, at grassroots level, yes, there were children, there were child centers. But when I came once, I got the opportunity to see the art exhibition that ActionAid Bangladesh had organized in Dhaka. The drawings were done by the children, and those drawings were exhibited. The drawings had come from far and remote places where ActionAid Bangladesh were working in the
Mahbub
community.
is showing the book. He still has the book.
Yes.
Wonderful. We should post. We need to post that.
Yes. It has to be shown. I mean, it was so wonderful. I mean, I don't remember the artist's name, but some very renowned artist of Dhaka. He had reviewed and he had come there, and you had invested there in the child centers, local art teachers, artists to really train the children in drawing. So, apart from the basic necessities, we say, okay, school, the child is going fine. But to really do the holistic development of children, ActionAid Bangladesh Child Sponsorship was the pioneer, and I have taken the learnings to every country, and the global, all the countries of ActionAid Bangladesh, that look, this is how the lives are changed. And you change the life of one child, of a village, and these child within 8-9 years are adults. And, and then there was, maybe Mahbub will talk more about the child journalist story. I'll stop here.
Thank you so much,
Mahbub,
Cindy.
in your journey, and how do you see the ActionAid Bangladesh child sponsorship in the sense of, you talked a little bit about the features and what happened, but did you see any change in any community, any of the children? And then if you go on, we'll then share about the community journalism project.
Absolutely.
What is your most proud moment in
I would
child
say
sponsorship?
I was so proud to be working with you, and at the time we had over 25 development areas, and every area or project was a success story because we had long-term partnership with communities, with children, with families. We have seen their development, we have seen their dreams and aspirations, and how the human rights-based approach actually rooted into ActionAid program, especially since 2008 when you joined. And because you had the intention to work with children and families and also community with from holistic perspective. And there are stories if I start, and it will be like a few days to complete. So every project area, we have unique stories. It's not only about children's spaces, but also every project has, when I went to Faridpur, for community needs assessment to start a project in 2002, we come to know about the need for children home for sex workers' children. And it was challenging at the time because it's not easy to shift from rights-based approach to a little bit of charity, or that is also part of human rights. But when you join that, we started to realize that space, and we had partnership with local organization Shapla Mohila. They have created a home for children. That was the dream for their parents and mothers, actually, to protect their children in Faridpur. And Shapla Kuri, I believe the name of the institution. And I still see the pictures where children are safe, they're living. And I come to know that many children who were living there now joined like police force or working in public sector. These are amazing stories that how ActionAid supported those marginalized communities and their children, and provided safer spaces. And now they are actually becoming part of our and leader of our community. So
Do
this
you
is
remember Happy Home? Do you
Yes.
remember how we set up, which was very unusual because it wasn't a child sponsorship model, but we created the safe space for 150 girls. Seema, you wanted to come in?
Yes, yes. See, when I thought of when you asked me this question about the Proud movement and something that inspired, immediately the story of Happy Home came into my mind. But I did not mention it because it was not a child sponsorship project at that time. But that was wonderful. I don't know whether you remember, Faraba, you and I had gone there together.
You know how I have a different view about that the child sponsorship model that we all work with and Happy Home, because this is also about standing with the girls and supporting them. And this has been possible through multiple sponsorship, right? So it may not fit into a template, but this was something we did with that passion and believe that we would transform the lives of these girls, and these girls' lives have been transformed. So it is different from child sponsorship, but anyway, yes, you were saying.
Absolutely.
Yes, I mean, if we get into the technicalities of child sponsorship funding allocation, Faraba, Mahbub Hassan will know, the child sponsorship model at one time was so beautiful that it allowed for work outside the boundary of the community. We had something called National Fund.
Yeah.
Right? From ActionAid UK's child sponsorship, which allowed us to venture into other projects, to think of other communities to develop there and do this kind of work, which really didn't fit into very strict child sponsorship norms of children being there, messages, regular messages and all that. But at that point of time, the work that we did with the unrestricted money also came from child sponsorship. That was the beauty of it. And that was very inspiring work. I mean, I had gone there. I still remember it as a screen running in front of my eyes, where I was, and actually I bought the saris from there, blouse piece from the girls. They had done it in tie and dye method and all that. It was wonderful, really very inspiring. And
I think
so Mahbub,
yes, I should mention about another story. Yes. So that the story that you remember, that how we come up with the child journalism, and how they actually transform our communities through their activism. So this is the publication. I hope you have copies. So I have still copies with me in Canada, that when we're actually struggling a little bit, when there is some economic crunch during 2007-8, and we are struggling to retain sponsor for our steady funding for our communities and children and their families.
This was the recession, 2008 recession, globally.
Exactly.
So we were also hit by that.
And we were struggling to retain sponsors, and we are looking for stories. And mostly our child sponsorship communication officer from project area, they used to provide us stories from the field. So we come up with ideas, why not our children, write their own stories. Why not we collect them? Why not we train them? And why not we collect those stories for our communication and retaining our sponsor? That was a huge moment, actually. And we come up with a module. Thank you so much, Faraba, for supporting our project within child sponsorship, that we have created the training manual. We have conducted training across all the 25 projects at that time. And the child sponsorship communication officers, they were trained, and they trained children at the community. And as a result, we can see didn't provided us stories for retaining our sponsor, but also they have started activism at the community level. They are sharing their stories, they're advocating their issues, they're raising voices on various issues like child marriage, like access to quality education, and also breaking gender stereotypes. And through these forums, we organized, I think for the first time in Bangladesh in 2010, when World Cup was happening, in every project, in 25 projects, we had sports, soccer match, football match, which were played by both boys and girls. So that was a huge transformation, I would say, I witnessed personally, and how girls were playing passionately in community setting, which was like a very challenging at that moment.
Right? When you think of child sponsorship, is it just in one sentence, is it still a relevant model and a relevant program? Both Seema and Mabu? Yes? No?
From my side, of course, huge community engagement model by which we can engage community in our work. And this is the, I would
so
say,
it's still very relevant.
Model. Absolutely, very relevant and
Seema?
Absolutely empowered.
I would also
Seema?
say it's still very relevant. Not, not just for the child. The child sponsorship makes action aiders or any donor go to the community, get accountable, be accountable to the community, and then only take the stories back. So that, if really we do it with the empowerment of community mode, child sponsorship is still relevant. Of course, we'll have to rethink the communication, we'll have to rethink the safeguarding of children, we'll have to rethink the protection of children, the all those rules and regulations that were developed throughout these 40-50 years. And of course, I guess they are changing also. In ActionAid, child sponsorship model must have changed, but it's very much relevant because it makes us accountable to the communities and the children. And that's the real empowerment.
Right.
The power is in the grassroots, then in the hands of the communities and children.
And I totally endorse that. And that's why we are very keen, because one of the things is the child sponsorship model enabled us to work with communities and partners for 10 plus years. It's not project based of a few years and then moving on. And we have seen the evolution of both the child and the family and the community, because we do a lot of right-based work in terms of advocacy and lobbying and so on. But in today's context, now let me bring you to today's context. Do you think, given the global economic situation and other consideration, how is child sponsorship going to work out? And we had programs like invigorating child sponsorship, no, in ActionAid. We've taken multiple initiatives to make it more relevant, more communicable, interesting, not just a message going. What are your thoughts? I'm going to ask both of you. I'll start with you, Seema, and then I'll come to Mapu. Both the same question.
In today's world, Farhaba, developing and maintaining the trust of the sponsor, of the supporter, is very important on one side, and on other side, maintaining the aspirations and trust of the community. So in invigorating child sponsorship, we may have to still, evolve that, because that was also 10 years back. So the times and technology has changed so much in these 10 years. So if we are able to have a wonderful communication, a very, very honest communication with the sponsors, be able to really be accountable for the funds that are coming. The child sponsorship may still work. And when we combine it with the rights-based work, human rights-based approach in the community. Just 1 minute, I'll give you an example. If we are working with a government school, that's the right of the community, right? We are working to make the government school functional with the limited amount of money, where we intervene in the teachers training or making the bathroom of the government school better. We actually expand the impact so much, multi times. Then the previous times when we could just, cater to only limited number of children. So once it is done, mixed very well, integrated with the rights-based approach, plus a wonderful, wonderful kind of communication, Hassan will come better on that. But I would say still relevant. Things will have to be changed, of course. The rules will have to be changed. But and who is the better ambassador of a community's development than a child? No one. The child is the best ambassador. Child is the best reflection of what's happening in a family, in a community, in a country. So we will have to look at it from that perspective.
Beautiful. Beautifully said, Seema. Mahbub?
When I see sustainable development goals, and I can think about child sponsorship, because it allows us to work holistically. And I think I'm a big fan of child sponsorship, but the relationship with sponsor or supporter and the children and communities, that should be even stronger, and so that we can get more inspiration, more resources to work different issues that our communities are facing, from climate change to poverty, from hunger to quality education.
You see, we have been talking about child sponsorship as a one-way traffic, but I think Seema alluded to it that by working on child sponsorship, we have learned, we have also evolved, we have grown, the way we were developing our initiatives or any program was a more a top-down approach. But I think child sponsorship brought us closer to the community, and we learned to listen. We learned to understand. We also went into partnership, and the children have grown into becoming, as you said, ambassadors, but they are also activists. And when
Absolutely.
now we do a different kind of activism, we find the children relate to it and take it forward. So I would say that child sponsorship, the work with their family and the community, has given us also a position. We often talk in ActionAid that we are a rooted organization, and we are a rooted organization because of these initiatives, because of this model of working. Having said that, in today's context, if you come back to 2023, the competing the disasters have become more frequent. Humanitarian response is needed, whether it is because of climate crisis or it is because of conflict or displacement. How do you see the child sponsorship working out? And as we know, in many parts of the world, more and more children are becoming vulnerable. Their parents are being killed, or they're losing their family to disaster. What is your thought, and what would you like to say to ActionAid Bangladesh for the next coming 10 years? Who would like to go first? Seema? Mahbub?
Seema, please go ahead.
Okay, so if we have to do some long-term work, child sponsorship is still one of the options. May not be with the same restrictions or same rules that we had in the past, because if you compare it with the kind of funds that we get now, I don't know, in context of India, for example, the corporate social responsibility funds come for 1 year or 2 years or maximum 3 years, and that would also not be committed for the 3 years. how do you do a rooted work? How do you do a a work which is in depth and which actually brings change? The change in the communities doesn't come in 1 year's work. So child sponsorship still gives that option. And I was saying before, maybe the whole concept will need to change, because even if it is disaster, it is anything, there are children there. And children can be the last person to reach out to. So the whole paradigm will maybe need to shift in how we look at child sponsorship, and it will have to evolve to meet the current requirements. But I would say it's still worth doing it, maybe in some other form. Hassan?
Excellent.
Mahbub?
As I said, that I have seen the transformation in our projects and development initiatives. And children and their parents are huge constituency actually to work with disaster risk reduction, to work with the community mobilization on various programming to address climate change issues, and from resiliency, also from resiliency perspective. So the child sponsorship programming allows us to have a very good constituency in a grassroots setting, in a remote areas, like I would say Chaur Montas. I had the opportunity to work with FADAP as well. And we have seen that it worked very well, this model. But we need more resources, not only child sponsorship funding, there are other fundings are required because community needs are so huge to work with so many issues, from hunger, from poverty, climate, the impact of climate change. And so I would say definitely we, through child sponsorship, we have a very good constituency in the grassroots, and through mobilizing them, actually we can create more impact within our communities. And as Farhaba said, we have seen through our work at ActionAid that children are activists. They are not a recipient of service. They are activists. Even we have found 10 years, 12 years children, they are doing activism at the grassroots. Through grassroots journalism, we have found that. So, and they are our future.
Just let me, sorry to interrupt, but do you remember how we formed adolescent clubs? And then through the adolescent clubs, we held HIV sessions. So in a community, in a society where they don't prepare them, here the young members of our child sponsorship team, they formed the adolescent clubs. They talked about HIV/AIDS and prevention. They talked about challenging child marriage. You remember those initiatives. And it led to policy change. I think because of that, we took up the policy advocacy to come up with a policy for adolescents, because they were children and then there were young youth. But there was a whole group of people in the middle, and there was nothing for them. So we influenced the adolescents policy development and the services for them, the budget for them. So that was, I think, also a great contribution because of all of your work. And if you remember how we worked with children in the area of disaster risk reduction through school.
Absolutely.
Building resilience. When Cyclone Sidor happened, in some of the areas where we had undertaken development of the young people, training them about shelter and the risk, they were instrumental in moving the community to the shelter. The parents, the elders weren't going. You remember that?
Absolutely. And from Cyclone Sidor to various disasters, and we have found that how our program team, especially with the DA program team, how passionately they work with communities, and how the children and their families also helping others. So that is about community building. That is about human rights-based approach. I personally see that sharing about community resources, caring about each other. So these are very important for our community building and to fight any kind of barriers, maybe related to poverty or inequalities related to climate change. And I always cherish that child sponsorship project and development areas giving us a strong constituency, strong team that allows us to fight all these inequalities and poverty and also climate related issues.
So we all very strongly believe in child rights, not just the convention or a piece of paper. We actually, through our work in ActionAid, we're encouraging the practice of child rights, isn't it? Child's participation, child's voice in decision making, even within the family and, of course, in the community, and therefore at national level. Any thoughts on that?
Yes,
Because you
absolutely.
both mentioned SDGs and you both mentioned about the children. So, any thoughts on that line?
No, absolutely true. I mean, child sponsorship gave that opportunity of working on child rights, very focused work on child rights. But I would go one step further beyond child rights, the rights of all the marginal, I mean, rights of women's rights, the rights of the mothers of those children. You know, you name it, and ActionAid Bangladesh or ActionAid globally, the country programs have done it. So there's no doubt about it that child sponsorship really facilitated our work on child rights as well as other human rights aspects. And for that, I'll go back to the question that you had asked about, the whether it is suitable for 2023, the funding. I would say, yeah, at one time, child sponsorship was the sole funding source for ActionAid 20 years ago, maybe. But now, like Mahbub was saying, different mixes of funding can happen.
Of course, through our program like child sponsorship, we can focus more on quality education, more on climate change issues, women rights and girls' rights issues. These are a huge mandate for you as well. And I'm sure that the way child sponsorship programming works, that allows us to work in a sustainable manner. And it allows us to work for a few years in a community in partnership with other community organization. And I would repeat, when I see the sustainable development goals, and I feel that we need a constituency, we need a community who can actually mobilize all these resources in the community. And I firsthand witness as child sponsorship program manager at ActionAid Bangladesh that whenever we need anything from community, it was there because our child sponsorship staff, our community members, our children are very active in having this relationship, in this collaboration, in this collaborative effort. So it's a huge constituency for us. It's not just a means of fundraising, rather it's a huge community that can be mobilized for achieving all the sustainable development goals or addressing various issues that communities are facing. So I'm a big fan, still I'm a big fan, and I hope I will be a sponsor soon.
Wonderful. I mean, you've nailed it. True.
So I think now at 40, ActionAid Bangladesh would like to appreciate all the wisdom and all your support because that has enabled us to take this journey so far. And in the coming years and decades, I hope that you will all still be by the side of ActionAid Bangladesh, the children, the community that we work with, because we still have miles to go before we rest, isn't it? And a huge thank you for joining us for the development talk and the children that you started working with, Mahbub, have all grown up. So next time you visit, you will be very happy to see that they have moved on in life and they are taking new challenges. Seema, globally also the struggles for keeping child sponsorship going is still there, but I think we set an example how it is about rights, it is about encouragement, and transformation. If we want the transformation, this is the way to go. So let's keep holding the flag for child sponsorship and working with the children and the community. So stay where you are, stay well, take care, and all the best. Thank you so much.